Welcome back, everyone. Today I am undertaking a pretty big task here. I'm working on, if you've seen some of my videos in the past, this is a very familiar 2008 Nissan Quest base model 3.5 engine. It looks like I'm back at the passenger side CV axle. Gonna do the wheel bearing as well while I'm at it. Also, the boot tore. I think I've replaced it 2 or 3 years ago on this side, and it's already failed, so I'm going to get another replacement for that, but this time I went with a different brand of CV axle. I'm going to start on the passenger side first. 21 millimeter lug nuts. I'll zip those off first. I have a impact air wrench. Just wanted to show you underneath the vehicle where I placed the jack stand. So if you can see, it's where these ridges are. There's some ridges. I've always put the jack stand right there. That seems to be the thickest spot. Probably other places you can put it as well, but I'll just do one side at a time so I can have the jack as a backup while I'm underneath here working. And start off, I'll zip these off. I guess you don't really need to see this, but like I said, 21 millimeter. Alright, those are all zipped off. I'm going to get this wheel off. I need 2 hands for that. And I'll show you what's coming up next. So with the wheel off, here's what we're looking at. We have the 32 millimeter axle nut with an impact wrench. You can get that off with the without weight on the tire or anything. It'll zip that off. Always use a new cotter pin. I think the new CV axle comes with that. Looks like, let's see here, we'll have to remove these bolts. I've done this before, like I said. I think it's just these 2 big ones here to hold this bracket for the caliper. This knuckle here, you got nuts and bolts. Those have to be removed to drop that down, and that'll let you take this whole assembly down and push this axle out. You can see, here's what my problem is. So yeah, just 2 or 3 years ago, and the boot's already ripped. I just don't understand it. Been driving around on that for a while. Still doesn't make any real appreciable noise, but you know, you can see the grease is definitely able to escape that way and let contaminants in there. Like I said, while I'm at it, I'll be doing the there's another shot of those knuckle bolts and the knuckle nuts. Here's the ABS cable. It comes down to a, looks like a 10 millimeter bolt right there that I'll have to take out, and there's four bolts on the back here. Once you get this this assembly off for the caliper bracket off, caliper off, then you can take the disc off. Hub's behind there, and there's 4 bolts holding that on. So I'll get to those and give you a little more detail as I get to each spot on there. So the next step after evaluating a little bit is, I believe I'll take off the shroud here, take that out. It's just got these little plastic clips. You have to take this off to get to a variety of things. The oil filters behind there. I'm going to do an oil change while I'm at it, while this is all up in the air. But you take those out, that'll let you have some good access to be able to have a impact wrench. It'll have an extension to go back here. And these are down here, it looks like these are 19 millimeter bolts right here for the caliper bracket. Now if I take off the caliper bracket, I believe the pads, by the way, this is a good time to check out your pads. That side looks good. Can't really see that side, but I'll check it once it's out. I believe it'll all come together as a unit, and I'll probably tie it up here, tie it off up here with some cable ties to get it out of the way, and that'll be the first thing I do. Maybe second thing I'll do is use the 32 millimeter impact on this to get this off the axle nut. So I'll go ahead and like I said, take the shroud off, do the 19 millimeter 2 bolts, one at top, one at bottom there for the caliper bracket, and get that put up out of the way. Alright, so here we are with the shroud off. Like I said, just those 4 fasteners, 2 types of fasteners. The top part is a little different fastener than the side there. Anyway, it does a good job keeping the water and other stuff out of the belt area and everything. So I did remove the 2 19-inch bolts. They were rather difficult. The air impact wrench could not handle it, so my trusty Persuader long wrench, long socket wrench, was able to do it, and luckily I was able to have enough oomph to get that out. I want to point out this dust shroud. So you want to, when you put it back on, we'll record it before we take it off, but so it's got this indentation. You want this indentation out. You want this this little notch right there going towards the front of the vehicle, so you put it back the same way. And I think these are 12 millimeter bolts. There's 4 that you got to take out. Once we separate this steering knuckle away, we should be able to get and take off the 32 millimeter axle bolt. We should be able to get to these 4 bolts here, 2 there, and then 2 at the bottom. Also remember the 10 millimeter bolt with the ABS cable. We have to get that out of the way and make sure we don't damage that. So that'll be the next thing we work on, and I'll make sure I show you the old versus new. Here's the wheel hub right here. It's been in place, as far as I know, since I've had the vehicle. I bought the vehicle with about 101,000. It's got about 191 right now. So I've never replaced these. I'm going to guess they're original. So certainly lasts a long time. So like I said, next we'll hopefully get this 32 millimeter axle nut off and be able to get these. These bolts here are, looks like this is 17 millimeter bolt, and then that would be a 19 millimeter nut. 2 of those. Then we'll be able to lower that down once we get the ABS cable out of the way. Alright, so here I am. I got the knuckle bolts out. They're the exact same size, so they can go back in any way you want. Let's see here. I misspoke earlier. I said those bolts for the wheel bearing were probably 12s. They're 17s, 17 millimeter. So with the knuckle out, the CV axle came right out. I remember, like I said, I replaced this once 2 or 3 years ago, and I greased it before I put it in. Slid right out. The other side might not be so easy, but now to get these out, I'll use the impact on these 4 17 millimeter bolts here, and I got some of my very favorite PB Blaster to help with that, to get this wheel bearing out. I might have to smack it. We'll have to see, because like I said, I don't think it's ever been out of here before. So once we do that, we could do the CV axle now or later. I might just going to work on the wheel bearing now. I might have to put it back up temporarily, just run the bolts through here to brace it if I ended up needing to smack it. So have some way to hold it. But that'll be the next step, get the wheel bearing out. And next we'll tackle the CV axle, and you can see I think those are 12 millimeter. Maybe they're 10. I'll update with what they are, but there's 3 of them. Kind of like a little tri pattern. Yeah, there's the 3rd one there in the back. I've had them off before. There's a bearing right there on the CV axle that rests inside that holder, and then once you have those 3 bolts loosened up, it should slide right out of the transmission. The hub came out. Hub goes in like this. So this really the only thing that rests inside there to hold it in is this area right here, which you can see the corrosion. So I did have to smack it pretty good. What I did is I used I think it's a 5-pound sledge, and I hit it on the edge and rotated it, and when I rotated it, it eventually just popped right out, flew out, and I didn't end up I was hitting it on this front side edge, and I did slightly bend the dust cover, but I bent that back. Some of the paint's peeling off of it. So what I'll do now is I'll wipe this out real good, clean it out, maybe use a wire brush, clean it out, and get that ready for the new hub. I wanted to show back in here where that bearing holder is, with the 3 screws missing out of it now. You can see, and all the way in the back there is where it goes into the transmission. You can see back in here, yeah, right where my light is, right there. Slides into the transmission right there. It says you can lube up the end, the spindle, with a little transmission fluid. I have no leaking transmission fluid coming out of there. Some videos say you will. I did not. I'm going to put some anti-seize where the bearing rests, right in there in that raceway. I did that last time. It came out real nice and easy, and I'm going to probably put some anti-seize inside here as well, maybe on the back of the dust plate. So next I'll show you what you see what the old hub looks like, but I'll compare it to the new hub, and I'll show you the old and new CV axle. Alright, as promised, here is a shot of the new and old CV axle. This is passenger side we're doing, and the new and old wheel hub. The old wheel hub spins a lot more freely than the new one. The new one feels tighter, has more resistance, but surprisingly I don't hear any noises just spinning the hub alone. Maybe with the wheel on it, a little weight, it would sound different. But these are TRQ parts, and they have a really good warranty. I believe the hubs, maybe all of it, I'll have to find out and put a comment in there about whether it's lifetime or not. I thought it said lifetime. It says these at least the hubs came with a little piece of paper that said they support 2004 to 2009 Quest vans. I'm not sure if the axles are the same, fit the same range of vehicles. But like I said, I'm going to apply some anti-seize on this raceway, where this is the bearing here that fits in that raceway, and the 3 bolts I mentioned, the 3 12mm bolts go to. And I'm going to also lube up that. I remember seeing that somewhere with just a little transmission fluid to make it go into the spline easy. And I think there's a seal around that as well, but I've never changed that, and I don't intend to change it this time. This kit also came with new cotter pin, a new cap, which mine didn't have the cap, and also a brand new nut and washer, which I'll use all those. The whole kit, the two CV axles and bearings were they were, I think, $270 some. I think they've gone up since then. I bought this way back in September, and finally getting around to put it on now. But yeah, I can only imagine what the shops would charge to install all four of these. Probably, my guess would be $1,500 to $2,000. So for $300, do it yourself, save some money. All right, next step, I'm going to be putting the new CV axle in place and bolting up the three 12mm bolts and torquing those if I can get my torque wrench in there. I believe they don't take a lot of torque. I'll try to comment on that when I have it in place there. So I have the 3 bolts holding the bearing of the passenger side CV axle. They're tightened down. I couldn't locate a spec for the foot-pounds, but I watched another video where it was a 16mm. These are 12, and they said 32, so I took it to about 20. These have lock washers on them as well. It went right in there. This axle popped right in there. One other thing you can check is back here. You can get on the underside and just see if this black piece, in this case it's a black flange piece, mates up perfectly to the raceway, and it does. So I know it's all the way in there because of that holder for the bearing. Real easy to tell that you got it inserted all the way. Some of these CV axles don't have that, I guess, but this one's so long that it needs that support in the middle. So we know it's in there all the way, and the next step is I'm going to finish cleaning up the housing for the bearing, and I'll show you what that looks like when I do that. But I did clean that up. This bearing raceway, I did clean that up and put some anti-seize on it. So I doubt I'll ever change this again. Let's hope not. But it'll come out if it does need changed. All right, so I wire brushed and used a little bit of PB Blaster as I was wire brushing. It's shiny because it has the anti-seize on it, where the dust plate's going to meet it, because that could corrode, and also where the race of the wheel bearing will go. And I like to do that. Never had a problem with doing that before. It makes it way easier to get stuff off. Maybe if I ever have something fly apart, I'll change my mind on that. But one thing I wanted to point out about these wheel bearings is, so they can go 2 different ways. So if you look at the mounting holes, you can see that is the incorrect way, because even though it'll bolt up like that, you need to have, here's your ABS sensor. That ABS sensor is going to fit inside. There's 3 slots on this hub, and you need to have this mounted so that ABS sensor will go down inside that slot. So the only way this can be mounted, so that'll occur, is if you have, someone else pointed this out, if you have the two notches off to the side and the one on the bottom with your bolt hole pattern matching, then that'll work. Because you can see there, I got, with the bolt hole pattern like that, it's going to match up where the ABS sensor has to go, and it's going to drop right inside that little slot right there. So always make sure otherwise you won't be able to put your ABS sensor back in there, and you have to be taking apart a lot of parts unless you're going to run without any ABS. So put it back that way. And I would have paid more attention when I took the first one apart, but it flew out as I had to knock it out of there. It was so corroded. So I'm going to get this put in and then we can start putting it back together. I'm gonna lubricate up the spline with some grease, so when it goes inside here it'll go in nice and easy, which it will anyway. And I'll torque down these bolts best I can. So that's what's next. So a little trick I did, so in order to torque these down, it's 44 foot-pounds for the 4 17mm bolts for the hub. I went ahead and I just to brace it a little better. Probably could have done it just with the tie rod and ball joint holding it, but just to not put any extra pressure on them, I went ahead and snugged it up to the knuckle assembly there, and I left the CV shaft out so I could have more room to get to it back there. I did want to see if, let's see if we can get a good shot of that back here. So if you look back here, you can see there's the hole where the ABS sensor goes through, and there's the notch. So you see it's got to line up like that. Let's see, I'll even see if I can put just temporarily put that in there. Well, I have the bolts still in there. Let me get that out. Okay, so with the, now see if we can get a better shot of that. Yeah, you can see how the ABS sensor has to go right there through that opening, and then it is able to detect the motion. So yeah, that's why that's got to be lined up like that. So I'm gonna, like I said, I can get to all these 4 bolts easy, and I'm gonna go ahead and torque those down 44 foot-pounds, and then take this off the knuckle again and insert the spindle spline with some grease on it. That's the next step. So where we're at is I've went ahead and the knuckle nuts and bolts, I've gone ahead and torqued those down. I didn't have torque specs for those, but the caliper brackets, which I'm going to do next, were specs were 115 foot-pounds. So I did these a little above, say like 110 is what I think I torqued these to, and because I have a 17 and a 19, and they're good and tight. I have my ABS sensor in there and tight. This is about 15 foot-pounds, I think, is what it said. Routed it all correctly. One thing I did want to say, these 4 bolts for the, before I forget, these 4 bolts for the wheel hub, the wheel hub did not go in as smoothly as I thought. I mean, it had a little resistance, so I snugged down these bolts cross pattern to pull in the hub before I torqued them down. And that helped me pull this hub in nice and easy. And also, this is the old nut off the original, from the, I think it's original even to the car. What happened, and it's a 32mm like I was saying, this new one they gave me, this has a built-in washer too. You can see it's kind of part of the nut. But this new one came with this new nut and washer, but it's a 36mm I think, because I have a 35 deep impact socket and it does not fit this. I do not have a 36mm socket, so I am reusing the nut, but we'll get a new cotter pin in there. But so the next step is I'm going to put a lug nut and cinch down the disc to the hub, and then put on the caliper, mount the caliper. I will be snugging these bolts to about 115 foot-pound is what it's calling for. I'm on the driver's side now. The passenger side is all complete, except I'm going to tighten the axle nut to 92 foot-pounds, I think it said, once the tire's on the ground. Give it a little more stability. So same thing with this situation. The caliper bracket, those 19-inch bolts. I had to actually use the long-handled ratchet. My impact wrench wouldn't take those off, so I got those loose. Also, I was able to loosen the 19-inch bolts here, or nuts here rather, and the 17-inch bolts are there. I got to hold those tight. Already took out the, there it is. Already put it aside. The ABS sensor, yeah, ABS sensor's out. 10 millimeter for that. And so similar situation, but a lot smaller axle on this side. You can see it's a shorter axle on the driver's side. There's the ripped boot. It's been like that for a while now, completely ripped. I've never changed this one, so this might be a bit of a problem to get out, but it's a lot more straightforward since it's not as long. Doesn't have that center bearing and raceway to deal with. So yeah, I'm just gonna proceed in a similar fashion. 17 millimeter bolts, 19 millimeter nuts, and the 19s on the caliper. And yeah, I should be able to bump out the hit out the hub like before. It's probably pretty corroded in there as well. This is a 5-speed transmission. I'll probably say something about that in the comments. 5-speed transmissions have particular CV axles, as I understand it. So maybe I'll get a shot once I have the hub out. All right, picking up on the passenger side. Got the wheel hub out with little minimal difficulty. It actually ended up smacking it on the backside here with that 5-pound hammer, 5-pound sledge. Just be careful to support all this. You don't want to damage your ball joint or tie rod or anything. So you can see I got the CV axle out. I tried pulling it out and it had some play in it, but then it kind of got stuck where the boot was ripped. It wouldn't go back in, so I couldn't use it as kind of like a sliding hammer. It froze in the out position, so then I was stuck with what to try next. I consulted, there were some instructions with this TRQ CV axle, and it said to actually pry it out. So when there's a little retainer clip on the end of there, and I'll show you that. When that's fully inserted, that rusty looking, squarish looking area there, that'll be almost right up against the housing. And I barely could get a pry bar in there, but you can see it has kind of lobes on it. I was able to get it right there, a corner of the pry bar in between those lobes, and not use too much force, don't damage these seals or anything, and I was able to pop it out. And I'll show you the pry bar I used. This is the pry bar I used, and I was able to get this end right here. Kind of right behind one of these lobes. Let's see, this is a lobe right here. I was able to just get the corner of that in there, and as soon as I popped it correctly, it just popped out, and it slid right out after that. This, I believe, is the original CV axle, and yeah, I'll dress this up. This looks pretty good, actually. That and the dust shield didn't get all bent up this time, since I smacked the wheel bearing out from the back side. And I'll put some anti-seize on that. I'll show you the comparison of the new CV axle and the retainer clips I'm talking about. The longer passenger side CV axle did not have a retainer clip on it. So here we are New at the top, old on the bottom. TRQ CV axle. And right here is the retainer clip I'm talking about. It's got like a little break in it. That has to be there in place. The new one has one. And like I said, when you fully insert this has to be fully inserted into your transaxle. And this edge right here is pretty much right up against your transmission here. So should be very little room between your transmission and this edge once it's fully inserted. So I'll put a little transmission fluid on this end and a little grease on this end and get this back in place, and I'll probably put the wheel bearing in first using the same method I did on the passenger side. Here's another shot of a hub going in. You can see I've got the anti-seize on there. On the back you can see it around the edges. What it is, I've started these bolts to draw it in, and as you wiggle it and you can hand tighten these bolts, it's actually going in really well with the you can see it's still loose with the dust guard in place. It's drawing it right in, no problem. Always remember, again, as pointed out earlier, right here, you want to have that notch, the two notches kind of near the top, or at least the one notch right at the bottom where the 2-bolt pattern is. And that way your ABS sensor can fit right into that notch. Make sure you do that. And I'll be torquing these down like before to the same spec I mentioned before. But yeah, it's going in nicely. It's pretty clean in there. And I'll get this in and I'll move on to the new CV axle going in. Alright, so I have the CV axle fully inserted. You can see that the that housing is right up against it. It'd be tough to get. This replacement part does not have the lobes on it like the other one did, but it is smack up against the transmission. I measured the shaft that has to go in there to the base of that housing, 2 3/4 inches. I measured inside the transmission 2 3/4 inches. So I at first had difficulty getting that snap ring to go in far enough. What I did is I double lubed. I lubed it up with some transmission fluid inside the transmission to give it a little more lubrication. And once you get to a certain point, it just kind of stops. So then I grabbed it here at this end, and I didn't want to hammer on it or anything like that, because you could mess up the bearings inside here, because that actually moves in and out right there. That's what got stuck on the old one. It got locked out because they had failed. So you want to be careful. I just rocked on it a couple times, and you'll know it when it goes in all the way. It snaps right in. And like I said, you want it to be right up against the housing to be sure you've got that lock pin all the way in. Alright, so everything's back on, torqued down. I did these about 115, and these caliper housing bolts 115 foot-pounds. Everything's torqued down, ABS cable in there. Tighten down the bolt there just a little bit. So yeah, that's it. It's not a bad job to do. Just take your time. It'd save yourself a ton of money. And if you have any questions, comment in there and I'll answer them as best I can. Yeah, it's should be good for a while. Control arms that I did a while back, I've got a video for that. They seem to be looking good still. The rubber pieces in there are not all cracked or anything. So next step is to lower this down with the weight of the car and the wheel on here without, I have hubcaps, so without the hubcap, just a couple lugs on there, the weight of the car, then crank down the axle nut to 92 foot-pounds for each side, and then take the obligatory test ride. So I'll do that. I don't need to film that. Yeah, I hope someone gets some use out of this video. That's why I make them, just to try to give another source of information for people wanting to do their own work. And appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you want to. I'll keep making content as long as I enjoy it, and thank you for watching.